Okay. Well, we're recording now, Joe, so in just a few minutes we'll get started, and I'll just kind of line it up for you as we get closer.
Okay. What I'm seeing right now is a window not shared screen.
Yes.
I'm seeing, okay. Is that right? Okay.
Do you have your slide up now? Do you see it?
No. Yeah, there it goes. Okay. Got it now.
Oh, sorry, I had to hop into the ReadyTalk controls. Are you only seeing your PowerPoint slide?
All I see is where are all the sales hunters with a little gray window not shared thing over on the left bottom corner. And
okay.
Could I advance slides just through my keyboard or mouse or?
Yeah, give it a try with like your right arrow and see if you can go forward to a next slide.
My right arrow. Okay. No, that's not happening. I've got. Let me see.
Try clicking with your mouse. There you go. Oh, I think it was taking a moment.
Okay. There's just a delay. I've got a window not shared again.
Yeah, I think we clicked on a link in your slide and it went to that. Are you going to need internet on this?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like your tiger slide picture linked to a website, so that's why it hopped out. So you should be good now.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Who knew?
All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're good. Okay.
Okay. Good. And for anyone who's already on the audio portion of the call, you should be seeing where all the sales hunters as the opening slide for today's BOSS webinar series. Where are all the sales hunters? It's going to be presented by Joe Zente. And I'm just going to, there we go. And if I could remind everyone to please mute yourself, either whether it's muting yourself on your phone, your office phone, or you can use the pull-down menu next to your audio controls on ReadyTalk. If you have logged in audio, that's the means you have to listen and participate as well. So I would please remind you to mute yourself. If we wind up getting some heavy feedback on the line, if someone comes in your office or things start happening and it's interrupting with the recording we're doing, I'll probably go ahead and take the liberty to mute you. But we will open it up for questions. So that's why I'm encouraging everyone to please just remember to mute your phone or mute your control on ReadyTalk. Additionally, you can raise your hand in ReadyTalk. There should also be a pull down next to your name in the participants window on your ReadyTalk controls, and you should be able to raise your hand via that means. Or you can chat to us as well, chat a question, and we can look at that as well. Is everybody hearing us fine and everybody's ready to get rolling?
Yes.
And again, we'll be recording today. If anyone has any issues, I know we've had a couple issues with people being able to hear the webinar. For the most part, most people are able to hear it. So we are recording it. So if anyone has a problem, we'll be sending this out to anyone who joined today as well as anyone who was not able to attend but registered. So just to give you that heads up. And we'll get going in a moment, and I'll give one last reminder, not trying to be repetitive, but please remember to mute your phone, mute your office phone, or mute yourself in the audio window of ReadyTalk just because we're recording, and it just mitigates against any unexpected interruptions or audio breaking you might have on your side. And it looks like we're right at 10:01, and I'm going to hand the webinar over to Joe Zente, who is going to present today's next webinar in the TAB BOSS series. Joe, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And hopefully for all of you who may not know, this is my first time driving, so Rachel's given me control here, so hopefully I won't screw up too badly with regard to technology. But at any rate, thanks for joining. It's fabulous to be here today with you, and I know your time is valuable. So my goal today is to make this next hour, hopefully, the most valuable hour that you spent all week. Some of you know, well, all of you know, the session pertains to finding sales hunters and sales superstars. Some of you may know that it's actually the second in a series of 6 webinars about how any entrepreneur can build and develop a consistent, predictable, scalable, world-class sales organization. And obviously recruiting is part of doing that. So those of you who attended my session in April might notice that 1 or 2 of the slides may be familiar or similar. So for those of you who fall into that category, please bear with me. For starters, just a little bit about me. First of all, I've never really been a sales guy and don't consider myself to be one. I've spent a lot of time in sales and sales management in my career, but I actually started my career as a chemical engineer and spent a lot of time early in my career working for Fortune 500 companies as an engineer, later in sales, in management, and in various executive leadership positions. But the important thing there is I've never really considered myself a salesperson, although I've held just about every sales role that one can hold, and management role. And one of the things, I've always been amazed at the huge percentage of companies that have huge problems in consistency in sales growth and profit, but do little or nothing to fix it. And I think that happens a lot of times just because people become sort of exasperated. Now, after working for Fortune 500 companies, for 12 or 13 years, I committed myself to a life of serial entrepreneurship. I've run a bunch of companies. I founded 6 of them. I sold several. The companies I led ranged from software and hardware and electronics companies to things like sporting goods and wholesale fish companies. So everything from B2B to B2C, and fortunately, probably through a lot of trial and error and a lot of painful mistakes early in my career, I developed a process that I used to help all of these companies grow, independent of whether they were B2C or B2B, or whether they were electronics companies or fish companies, and applied this formula to every one of the companies. And every one of the companies grew steadily in revenue and profit and value to the point where I could sell it for a lot more than I started the company for. So, I'd like to share a little bit of this with this formula with you. Rachel, I'm trying to advance the slides, and for some reason, hold on, something's happening here. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go. Moving faster than I am. All right, so what is it that we really want? Most private business owners focus a lot of their attention on top-line growth, and especially smaller companies and entrepreneurs, they really have a huge focus on top-line growth. As all of you know, TAB members are not typical business owners. We're sort of a step above. We have a larger commitment, and TAB is part of that commitment. And as a consequence, we consistently outperform non-TAB members. And we think a lot about the top line, but we also should be thinking about some other things if we're not, and most of us are. So in addition to top line growth, we want to make sure we're looking at diversification of our customer base. So we want a lot of customers. We don't want all of our eggs in one basket. I live in Austin, Texas. Dell Computer is based here. I've seen Dell chew up and spit out lots and lots and lots of vendors because they were the only egg or the largest egg in a company's basket. And when they decided to change course or when they decided to squeeze margins, the company just couldn't afford to deal with it. So we want more customers. We should be looking at our cost of acquisition More customers and a low cost of acquisition usually adds up to profit. And we want to be predictable, and we want to have a stronger business. Okay. So we want the right kind of customers. Trying to advance. There's a little bit of a delay on my advancing the slide, so please bear with me here.
Joe, if you need me to, I'll just go ahead and advance for you. Just tell me next slide, and I'll take care of it.
You want to do that? Okay.
Sure.
So are you taking control? Are you taking control back, Rachel?
Yep, I'll do it. Are we on the correct slide with popular question?
You got it. Right.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So what we're looking for is, we really.
It's live.
I'm sorry. All right. So there's a lot of questions that we hear practically daily here at Z3. First of all, every day, people are asking us, do we have the right people on the right seats in the bus? They're struggling with sales. They're trying to grow sales. They want to know if they have the right people. They want to know why they can't trust their sales forecasts. They want to know if their salespeople did okay last year. Why isn't their activity and performance reflected in their quality of their forecast? A lot of business owners feel like they're being held hostage by their salespeople. They know that their salespeople may own some important relationships, and they may or may not have some great visibility into what they're doing. So they don't know how much mediocrity they should be tolerating from their salespeople. They want to create a sales effort that's going to create profitable growth while minimizing risk. So, most entrepreneurs think that they could create an amazing sales organization if they only had lots and lots and lots of money to do that. And they believe that great salespeople will cost a lot of money. So they want to create profit while minimizing risk and do it economically. And at the end of the day, and they're always asking this one, which is part of the reason for this particular session, which is, where are all the sales hunters? And how do we find them? How do we locate them? And how do we keep them? Rachel, you could move forward. Rachel?
Yes, do you see the next slide, sobering sales statistics?
I don't see it yet, but maybe I'm on a big delay. All right. So if we're on sobering sales statistics, so here's the thing. Hunters are hard to find. All right. If you gave your organization an effectiveness score of 9 or 10 with regard to finding hunters, congratulations. Most people don't. Most people really struggle with this one. So, and the reason is because it's hard. There are a lot of sobering sales statistics out there, and you can see them up here on your screen. So, and these statistics come from the Bureau of Labor, the Department of Labor, BNet Daily, and some other very reputable sources. And the bottom line is that most salespeople are just not good, and there's a good reason for that. Most salespeople have gone into sales in the same way I went into sales, which is by default. They went to school for something else. They went to school for communications or engineering or marketing or whatever it happened to be. And through necessity or through a desire to make more money, they wound up in sales by default. And as a consequence, the profession of sales, or the quote profession of sales, is loaded with completely incompetent salespeople. So less than 10% of salespeople are even capable of providing an ROI for your organization. 1 out of every 2 salespeople that's hired today in an organization will not be with that same company a year from now. And when it comes to the aspects of sales that most entrepreneurs are really longing for, which is hunting and closing, the statistics are absolutely pathetic. There's very, 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 very few hunters and closers out there. So we're basically looking for a needle in a haystack here. Rachel? So as you know, all of this stuff, these sobering sales statistics can add up to a lot of pain, and it's for good reason. So a question I would have, because well, you've already moved forward. You can stay there, Rachel. Incorrect. All right. Hopefully, all of you see the screen saying the true cost of bad sales hires. So the question is, how much does an incorrect sales hire really cost you? And most business owners would say a lot. But I've thrown together a couple of slides here with some examples of how much it could really cost you. So the next few slides, and we can move through these very quickly. And I have a spreadsheet, by the way. If any of you would like a calculator, I'm happy to send you the spreadsheet or give it to Rachel, and she could post it along with the recording of this webinar. But when we're looking at the cost of bad sales hires, we want to look at the cost of turnover. And so, for example, if you've hired 6 salespeople in the last 5 years, but 4 of them quit, your turnover percentage, say, is 66%. You could look at interviewing costs. And when you're looking at interviewing costs, you want to look at the number of candidates that you've interviewed per position. You want to look at the duration of hours per interview and how much time you spent reviewing that with your fellow managers and your colleagues at work. And then the average hourly value of your time and your manager's time. And when you start looking at those costs, it starts to pile up into some big numbers. Rachel, can you advance? So the next thing you want to look at is payroll costs. How many months was your average sales ghost employed, and what was the actual cost between salary and commission and benefits, and if there's a severance or something like that, if you had to pay any additional costs, what the average cost was, and then take a look at the training costs. How much it cost in terms of your time coaching and your manager's time coaching and training these people, and additional onboarding and training and exit stuff, any of that. And when you add those up, Rachel, you can advance to the next slide. When you start adding those up and really looking at the true cost of a bad hire, you could see that those numbers get really, really, really pretty large. Here's, Rachel, could you advance one stroke? So here's the big question, and we might want to take a little break here just for questions if you'd like. But the question is, did we forget any other costs? All right, Rachel, you can advance.
Okay, sure. And no one has any questions? We'll open it up again at the end.
So go ahead, advance.
Okay.
So the costs that we're not looking at are the opportunity cost of lost sales and unhappy customers. And the question I would ask you is, what is the real cost of an unhappy customer, or a large ding on your company reputation? If you hire the wrong salespeople, if they don't follow up appropriately, if they're not doing the correct things, and if they're not representing your company the way they want you to, either if they're still at your company or if they're no longer there, what is the real cost of making an improper hire? And if you start adding up those costs, the numbers can really become astronomical. So, the cost of hiring anyone incorrectly is great, but the cost of hiring a salesperson who owns relationships and who's representing your company out there in the world can really be astronomical. So, and I guess the flip side of that question is, if all of the people were effective, what would that do to your bottom line? Now, there's good news. There's good news in all of this, and to this next slide that Rachel just brought up. over 80% of private company owners rate their ability to hire and retain effective salespeople as poor. And it says here that this is great news for you. And actually, it is great news. 80% rate their ability to hire and retain effective salespeople as poor. Another 15% rate their ability to hire and retain effective salespeople as below average. So that means that only 5%, 1 out of 20, business owners rate their ability to recruit, hire, and retain effective people, only 1 out of 20, as average or above average or good or great. So if you can get your recruiting process up into the above average range, the likelihood is really, really high that you could blow your competition out of the water, which is why this is good news. Rachel? All right, so we're talking about a needle in a haystack, and we're talking about, that it's very difficult to find these folks, these hunters and closers. So how do you find those hunters and closers among all those beautiful faces? And that's one question that people are always asking. Another question is, what do you think the chances are if you were able to find one of those needles in a haystack? If you found a great athlete and you put him or her on a mediocre team, what are the chances that they would stay? Rachel? So before we answer those $10 million questions, every business owner that's seeking to upgrade their sales should likely be asking not only how to hire better salespeople, but some other very basic questions. They should be asking, if we do find them, how do we keep them? How do we make our team be in a way that a great athlete will stay on my team? A great athlete will be encouraged to stay on this team. That great athlete won't be one of those 53% that goes to another company within a year. Because what you don't want to do is invest a lot of time and money finding great athletes and putting them on a team that isn't going to be able to keep them. And that really looks like developing a culture which will be able to motivate and retain great sales athletes. So this formula here is what we call the uncommon sense formula for success. So all of the intellectual property inside Z3 is called uncommon sense. And as I mentioned earlier, I developed this process and I applied it to all of the companies that I ran, but we also applied it to IBM and AT&T and Clear Channel Communications and a whole variety of Fortune 500 companies, as well as hundreds of private companies, and in over 100 different industries. So, and the important thing here is that it's simple, it's practical, and it's no nonsense. But the more important thing is that there's no magic to doing this. So the uncommon sense formula for success is listed here. You can see it. It's just simply a two-step process. The first step is diagnostics, because we can't fix things unless we can see them. And the second step is this three-legged stool of a sales process, a sales management process, and a sales recruiting process. And in order to make this simple to implement for any company, I put together a checklist that I will also include, and Rachel can post this on the, when she posts the recording for all of you to have access to this. Sounds like we have a little feedback in the background. Now, today we're going to focus on the third leg of the three-legged stool, which is the sales recruiting process. So, Rachel? All right, so how do we go about finding all of these wonderful hunter, closer, needle in the haystack salespeople? Again, 19 out of 20 business owners rate their ability to do that as poor or below average. And there's a very good reason for that. And the reason is simply that they don't know how to find them. They don't know where to look. And then most companies use traditional processes that they use for finding other types of employees to find salespeople. And the unfortunate fact is that just doesn't work. So, using a process that you use to find an accountant or an engineer or a programmer or an administrator or just a project manager, if you try to apply those same methodology to finding salespeople, it doesn't work. And many people, including probably some of you here on the call today, may have experienced that firsthand. Because this issue of finding hunters is near and dear to many people's hearts, there's a lot of books that have been written, and the books pretty much outline similar types of traditional sales approaches. It starts with so on the traditional side, business owners get resumes. A lot of times they'll talk to their friends and colleagues. Who do you know in my industry that's successful? And maybe they'll contact that person, or maybe they'll recruit headhunters to pilfer their competition for the quote best salespeople in the industry. In the traditional sales process, people will look at resumes. They'll take a look at resumes. They'll put the good ones, the professionally done ones, in one pile. They'll put the ones that don't necessarily look that great into the circular file. Unfortunately, a lot of some great salespeople aren't great spellers and grammar people. So a lot of the good resumes might be in the trash can. A lot of times they'll put them through a series of traditional interviews. If the salesperson is successful in writing a good resume and maybe connects with the managers or the owners, maybe they like the same football team, maybe they went to the same university, maybe they belong to the same fraternity or sorority, there'll be some level of bonding and rapport. And because there's so much pain in hiring, and because a lot of business owners wait until they need a salesperson instead of looking for a salesperson all of the time, they'll sort of listen selectively and they'll pull the trigger after looking, and maybe they will look at the record of accomplishments and their industry experience and sometimes even past earnings. All of those things can be misleading. Now, an effective sales process looks very, very, very different than that. In an effective sales process, we want to do two major things with salespeople. First of all, we want to take as much subjectivity out of it as possible, because salespeople, even ineffective salespeople, are sometimes skilled at wooing managers and hiring managers who in a subjective way. Okay, so we want to make the process as objective as we can. The second thing we want to do is we want to make it entirely behavioral, and this is hugely important. Now, it doesn't matter what a salesperson tells you. It almost doesn't matter what it says on their resume. What does matter is how they behave as they're selling you in the process, because independent of what they're telling you and independent of how they tell you they will sell and they will behave, the behavior that they exhibit throughout the interviewing process is the behavior that they're going to exhibit when they represent your product or service. Okay, so when you put together your recruiting process, you don't want to roll out the red carpet, and you don't want to make it comfortable. You want to make it very, 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 very uncomfortable for a salesperson to interview with your company. In other words, you want to act like a difficult customer, a difficult prospect. You want to test their prospecting skills. You want to test their listening skills. You want to You want to test their qualifying skills. You want to test their ability to generate bonding and rapport, and all of the other things that they will need to do. You want to test their ability to get through to a decision maker and understand your decision processes. All of the things that they'll need to do when they're in the real world, you want to try to create that in your recruiting process. Okay? So an effective recruiting process looks like this process on the right side of your screen, where step 1 is identify, step 2 is to search, step 3 is to test, step 4 is to qualify, and then step 5 is a panel interview, step 6 is a hiring interview, and we'll talk more about these all in the next slides. Rachel?
Sorry to interrupt. You are going to go into more details. I'm interested in learning what the qualified dual phone means.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I've got an echo here. Right?
I apologize. What was that?
Okay, we're back in action, I think. I was just saying I had an echo. All right. So next slide. So in the identify step, what we want to do, a very, very big question that you want to ask yourself before you start putting together an identification of what the great salesperson needs to look like in your organization, because salespeople come in all different sizes and shapes and colors. Okay, some are good at farming, some are good at hunting, some are good at long sales cycles. Some salespeople that are very good at quick turn transactional sales are going to fail in long sales cycle strategic sales, and there's a whole variety of things. So a question to ask before you start recruiting is, what is it about your business that makes it difficult for a salesperson to succeed? Okay, and as we move through this process, I would ask about 30 different questions to really zero in on the identification criteria to answer that question. Rachel? Okay, so let's say we're looking for a hunter, and because that's the title of this this webinar. All right, so hunters have certain attributes, okay? And without knowing what those attributes are, we're not going to be able to find them. All right, so here listed on your screen are some hunter attributes. So what does a hunter do? A hunter loves to prospect, okay? They get bored with account management. They like to prospect. They like to move. A lot of times they have ADD, but they enjoy moving from prospect to prospect. They always have blood dripping out of their mouth, and they enjoy prospecting. They enjoy calling. They enjoy knocking on doors. They love that challenge. Okay, they're great at getting past gatekeepers. They're great at getting to decision makers. They are great at not only at prospecting, but actually at getting appointments and getting commitments through prospecting. They know how to receive plenty of introductions. And not only will they prospect, but they'll prospect consistently. They have little or no need for approval, which basically means they really don't care if people like them or not. Okay? And they very, very quickly recover from rejection. So if they fall off the horse, they quickly get back on. Okay? Rachel? All right, so that's part of the identification criteria. Now, the second step is to search. Most business owners start with a much, much, much smaller pool than is necessary. If we want to bring the statistics on our side, and if we know we're looking for a needle in a haystack, we need to start with a much larger pool of candidates. Okay, and the bigger the better. All right. As I said earlier, most business owners wait until they have a pressing need, and then they embark on a recruiting campaign. Okay. Now, while it's fine to embark on a focused recruiting campaign, if you need someone, really, because we're looking for a needle in a haystack, we should be constantly recruiting. We should be recruiting 24/7. you don't want to wait until your quarterback breaks his or her leg before you start looking for a quarterback. You know, great quarterbacks, NFL quarterbacks, are needles in a haystack. Great salespeople, hunters, are needles in a haystack. So always be recruiting. Now that doesn't mean you have to have a 24/7, you know, pedal to the metal, you know, highly expensive recruiting campaign going on all of the time. But it would behoove all of us to have some type of consistent messaging out there in the world that you're always looking for great salespeople in whatever methodology you want, through LinkedIn, through some recurrent emails, on your website. Make it big and bright that you're always looking for great sales talent, okay? And always be looking, just as if you were a recruiter of an NFL team, okay? All right. The second thing is to not accept mediocrity, okay? Even if you have a whole lot of pain around the need for a salesperson, don't make compromises. Be crystal clear that you'll accept overachievers only. Great salespeople love that message. They want challenge, okay? They want to be in an environment where there's only overachievers. And if you can create an environment and you could make a declaration that you will accept overachievers only, that message alone is going to start raising the eyebrows of overachievers out there in the sales community, okay? Then you want to write, when you do start your search, you know, if you are going to be placing ads wherever you're going to place them, in LinkedIn or Ladders or Indeed or Simply Hired or wherever it happens to be, you want to make your advertisement as distinctive as possible. And so try to be different, okay? Don't try to say the same blah, blah, blah that everybody else is saying, because hunters are looking for something special, okay? Now, in the ad, you want to identify, actually before you write the ad, in the identification step, you want to identify your must-haves and should-haves. But when you do write the ad, you want to make sure that it's crystal clear what are the things that are non-negotiable, and then you also want to include the things that are nice to have. As we mentioned earlier, you know, what's different about the job. Don't be so fluffy in your ad writing. Be challenging in your ad writing. Start with your ad challenging people. Again, hunters and closers love challenges, okay? They don't love when people roll out the red carpet and make it really easy to get hired in your company. They love challenges. So the more challenging you can make your recruiting process, the more likely, from the get-go, from the time you start searching, the more challenging you can make that process, the more appealing it will be to the great hunters and the great challengers in your community, okay? So remove the fluff from your ad and just don't make it so easy. Don't make the whole process easy, okay? Rachel? All right, in the qualification step, and we will take some time at the end of the call, by the way, to take questions and talk about the phone screens and some other things. But in the qualify step, we want to use the criteria that we developed in the identification step. Again, we want to know in advance if we're looking for an account manager or a farmer or a hunter or a closer. We want to be crystal clear about what the person's going to need to do. Is this a direct sales job? Is it inside sales? Is it outside sales? Is it channel management? You know, is it going to be, is there going to be a lot of face-to-face work? Is there going to be a lot of travel? Is there going to be a lot of time management involved? You know, is it the kind of job that a salesperson is going to have good time management skills? And what is the sales cycle? This is a really big thing that a lot of people overlook. A salesperson isn't a salesperson isn't a salesperson. And, you know, and some people that get a lot of juice and motivation out of getting, you know, getting a new order every week or every month will not be enamored if you have a 6 or 10 or, you know, or 15-month sales cycle. They might be a great salesperson, but it's going to be very difficult to keep that person motivated, okay? You want to keep it behavioral. And, you know, as we said earlier, what we typically do here is the qualification process includes 2 two phone screens. First, a 10-minute administrative phone screen, and then typically a 20-minute sort of hiring manager phone screen, followed by a panel interview, and then, quote, a traditional, quote, hiring interview. Okay? Throughout that qualification process, we want to be scoring. So when we use the 10-minute phone interview, it doesn't matter who in your organization does this. It could be your administrator, it could be an assistant. The first screen does not need to be a high-level screen. We create a series of questions along with a score sheet, and as long as the same person is doing it, the scoring will be relative to each other. All right, and on the score sheet, we want to assess their selling skills, their experience, how they're doing with regard to closing. Are they getting a commitment at the end of that call? How they qualify, how do they handle put-offs? So at the end of the 10-minute screen, when we say, well, thanks for your time, if you don't hear from us, sorry, and we'll be getting back to all of the candidates. If the salesperson allows that to happen and just says, okay, we'll see you, they're probably not the kind of salesperson that you're going to be looking for, because good salespeople will always get a commitment about what's going to happen next in the process. Okay? We want to assess their phone skills. We want to assess how articulate they are, how warm they are, their presence, and their listening skills, and really their MVP quality. Do they stand out from the crowd? Okay? Rachel? Okay. The next step in the process is an assessment. So none of us have time to do a lot of interviewing, and we want to start with a huge volume of people. We want to start with a lot of hay in the stack, so we're increasing our chances of finding the needle. So we test everybody, okay? And here we actually test before we do the phone screens. We test everybody. Now, some people prefer to test after the first 10-minute phone screen. But the earlier in the process you can test, the more you save in terms of phone time, especially when you're starting to tie into hiring manager phone time and owner phone time. All right? So basically what we want to do is we want to load up the funnel and then test everybody so that we could find the people that, the 5% of people that we want to work with in terms of interviewing. Now, many of you use assessments. If you've been in TAB any length of time, I know you use assessments, from DISC and other things, perhaps, in various parts of your businesses. And there's different ways and methods that have been used to evaluate salespeople. I'm hearing some music in the background.
Somebody
Rachel,
just
are you
put us
hearing
on
that?
hold. That's why.
Somebody put us on hold? Okay. All right.
Sure,
Well, we'll keep going.
I'm trying to find them.
All right. So there's different ways to evaluate salespeople. With regard to assessments, and I've used, over the course of my career, I think I've assessed people in every way that is known to man. There's different types of assessments. There's psychological tests, that will let you know if someone's going to go crazy with a Uzi in a post office. There's personality tests. Personality tests are usually good to see culturally how people are going to fit. There's behavioral tests like DISC and Insights and Myers-Briggs and things like that. That are great tools, and we use them with salespeople and sales managers, but we don't use them in the hiring process. There's aptitude tests. Now, aptitude tests are very, very dangerous in sales because most salespeople can tell you what they're supposed to do, but when it comes to behaving in that way, they're not really good at that. So, I could probably tell you a lot about how to play golf well, but put me on a golf course and I hit a lot of balls into the woods. So aptitude tests don't apply at all for salespeople. And then there's this test. by objective management that we use, which is really a will sell test, and it in my opinion it's the best assessment there is in the market for assessing salespeople in pre-hire. Okay, Rachel. Okay, basically what this assessment does. First of all, it's customizable, so you can preload your identification criteria, and that's a very, very, very important piece in the pre-hire thing, to be able to preload your identification criteria. Basically what this test does is it gives you a picture of a variety of things. The first thing it measures is skills or competencies. Okay? Now, skills and competencies are something, if you know them today, you're probably going to know them 5 years from now. If you're good at bonding and report today, you're probably going to be good at that 5 years from now. If you're good at uncovering decision processes today, you're probably going to be good at doing that 5 years from now. Okay? Conditions are different. Conditions are things that can change. They could change for a whole variety of reasons, but it's basically how an individual reacts to external events, how they react to a jerky boss, how they react to a new competitor coming into town, how they react to a competitor lowering their price, how they react to economic changes. Okay, conditions are as important, or sometimes more important, than the skills and competencies, and that's a big blind spot for a lot of people who are looking for to find great salespeople. The next thing that the assessment looks at are hidden weaknesses. Hidden weaknesses fall into a whole lot of categories. One is need for approval, but there's emotional involvement, there's someone's buy cycle. These are all things that are hidden from view in a typical interview. But they're also the things that derail somebody, that prevent someone who knows better from doing better. Okay? You know, someone with a high need for approval, for example, will have a very difficult time being assertive in a conversation and asking the tough questions that need to be asked. Okay? Someone who has a money weakness will have a very difficult time talking about money. Well, you have to talk about money in a sales conversation. Okay? So hidden weaknesses can prevent someone who has great skills and good conditions from actually executing. And the last thing this assessment measures is priorities. Are their priorities aligned with your priorities? And this is part of the customizable part of this assessment, which is very important in the pre-hire interview. Okay. Rachel? So as we said, you know, a lot of salespeople know if they knock on twice as many doors, the likelihood is that they'll get twice as many sales. Or if they pick up the phone twice as many times, you know, they'll have twice as many opportunities to sell. But there's no other profession where the gap between learning and actually doing is greater than in sales. So when you're interviewing people, don't listen to what they tell you they do or what they tell you they should do. Always pay close attention to what they're actually doing in the sales interview, because as I said earlier, it doesn't matter what they say; it only matters what they do. Okay. All right, Rachel. Okay. Now, by now, in the interview process, you've gone through the identification step, you've gone through 2 qualification phone interviews, you've got all the information you need to know, because you don't have not only the questions to those 2 initial interviews, but you also have testing information on these people, so you know where they're strong, you know where they're weak, you know what conditions they have, you know where their priorities are misaligned, you know their hidden weaknesses, you know whether they like selling or not, you know what motivates them, and you know all of their selling blind spots. Okay, so you have all of that information before you, the owner of the company, has to invest 1 iota of time in this recruiting process. Okay. So the first step in the face-to-face interview process is a panel interview. And in the panel interview, basically what we do, again, we create a behavioral system where someone has to sell something. Okay, my screen just went blank. Rachel?
I know, Joe. I'm trying to get it back up. Just keep rolling.
Okay.
There.
All right. So in the interview process, basically what we want to do is create a real-world 15-minute role play and allow them to sell something. And you and other folks, colleagues or hiring managers or other people from your organization can be in that panel interview and create a scenario where they have to sell you something, and then be very difficult buyers, be very difficult prospects, and see how they do. See if they're able to manage that conversation properly, how they determine what's important to you, analyze, evaluate if they know where the power is, who's really making the decisions, and things like that. So create this scenario, and all sorts of amazing things will pop out of that panel interview. Now, again, the other thing you have is all of their weaknesses and all of their hot buttons by virtue of your assessment. So in that panel interview, you'll also want to probe on their weak spots and on their nerve endings to see how they react. Okay? And so in the panel interview, you'll want to do a 15-minute role play, a 15-minute sort of debrief of the role play to get their assessment of how they've done. And then maybe a half an hour of additional conversation around the first half of the interview. All right. For those people that are still interested, acceptable, and qualified after all of those steps in the interview, then and only then do you want to go to the hiring interview. And the hiring interview is assessing, are they going to fit in your culture? That's when you get to tell them about, why your company is great, and you start to sell them, and ask all of the other traditional questions, about compensation and all of those kind of things. Okay? All right, Rachel? All right, so now you've landed this amazing hunter. You started with this gigantic pool of candidates, you've assessed, you've weeded down, you've knocked out all of the hay, you found a few needles, and you've assessed them, and you found the one that fits with you. So you have this fabulous athlete. So again, great athletes aren't going to stay on a team that they don't perceive is great, whether it's a sales athlete or a music athlete or a sports athlete. All right? They're going to get on down the road. So you've made this investment of time and energy to find this individual. Now you want to make sure that you maximize their opportunity for success, and that they perceive in the initial 90 days, in your honeymoon phase, they perceive that you've got it together with regard to sales. So you want to make sure that you have an onboarding plan. And this is another huge blind spot for many, many, many owners. That usually they find the sales candidate, they wipe the sweat off their brow, and they get over to doing the really important stuff in their business, okay, or what they perceive to be the really important stuff. When you hire a sales hunter, you want to have baked a 90-day onboarding plan. Now, I could share a lot of details about this plan with you. But at a 100,000-foot level, what you want in this 90-day plan, first of all, you want to demonstrate a clear path to success. You don't want to give the new salesperson, a life vest and send them out to sink or swim in hopes that they're going to solve all of your sales problems. You want to help them understand, and you may not have all of the answers, but you want to be able to maximize what a clear path to success looks like. Okay. And help them understand that. And part of that is the sales plan. The other part is the... Rachel, can you mute that?
Yeah, I'm getting there, sorry.
Okay. All right. So the clear path to success includes a sales plan, where they should be spending their time, what ponds they're going to be fishing in, what bait they're going to be using, and then also a recipe for success, which is, how many calls, how many networking events, how many doors they need to knock on. You want to help them develop that. You want to make sure once you develop it that you demand execution of the basics, and then you want to communicate very clearly what their revenue goal is, the specific activities that are going to feed into achieving that goal. Any reports, what the reporting structure is going to look like, and make that crystal clear on the front end, because salespeople typically don't love to do reports. Okay, the meetings and schedules, any preparations, and all of the communications that you expect, and raise your bar. Raise your bar really, really, really high. This is your opportunity to set the bar very, 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 very high in terms of what excellence looks like. And again, excellent salespeople want this. They relish it. They love the accountability, and they love the fact that you're prepared. Okay. Now, there's a lot more to the onboarding process, but these are the basics, with regard to the time we have today. All right. So if you want to embark on upgrading your sales, the question is, where do you begin? As I mentioned, the first thing is to raise your expectations. Starting today, just declare, I am no longer going to tolerate mediocrity in my sales force. I am no longer going to accept anyone except excellent with regard to hiring someone. I'm not going to settle for okay when it comes to hiring salesperson. Raise your expectations and commit to having the best sales force in your industry, whether your sales force has 100 people or one person. Okay, adopt the objective. Try to remove as much subjectivity out of the recruiting process as possible by using the objective approach. Okay, make it behavioral, and use it and make it behavioral throughout the locate and land process. And then don't stop after you land that person. Make sure that you complete your recruiting process by adding on that launch. Okay, because it's hugely, hugely, hugely important. Okay, if you want to go beyond just the recruiting, use the formula for success that we described. Step one is assess your people and your organization. Step two is the implementation of those three processes. Remember, a process is a series of steps that leads to a result, and a series of steps that leads to a result. You've got those processes in most aspects of your business. All we're talking about here is implementing it in, for sales recruiting, and sales management. Okay, and then lastly, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel here. Like most of the things we learn in TAB, when we're trying to do something great, the likelihood is someone within the TAB system has done it great before. So if you start modeling great behaviors and great processes, you'll start to see great results. Okay, so that's what I have to say. I promised to leave some time for questions, so here we are. Rachel, if you'd open up the lines, I'm happy to answer any questions.
The conference has been unmuted.
Yes, everybody's line is open if anyone wants to offer up any questions for Joe.
Someone asked earlier about the 10-minute and 20-minute phone interview. We touched very briefly on that. Did I address your question?
Yeah, if you can expand a little bit on what you meant by the dual phone, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So in the qualification process, what we do is we have 2 phone interviews for starters, because again, time is money, and we don't want to be burning a lot of manager time and your time and time, anybody's time. Okay, so the more time effective we can get on the front end, we want to do that. So the process includes 2 phone interviews before we start having people in and spending face-to-face time. The first interview is an administrative interview. Okay, it can be done by your assistant, your administrator. It could be done by anybody in your organization. It's a series of about 15 questions with a scorecard. Okay, and and there will be a lot of those. Okay, again, here at Z3, what we do is we pump lots and lots of people into the top of the funnel. That's step A. Step B is to assess everyone. So if we have 300 people into the top of the funnel, maybe 15 to 20 people will pop out of that. So now we're talking about doing, scheduling 10-minute phone interviews with 15 or 20 people. Administrative phone interviews. As a consequence of those 10 to 15 phone interviews, we might come up with maybe 5 20-minute phone interviews, okay? Out of the 5 20-minute phone interviews, which are usually done by a hiring manager, we'll come down to maybe 3 candidates that come to a panel interview, okay? And so in order to get 3 superstar people that we know a lot about, we've only really invested maybe 3 or 4 hours of phone time, okay? Which is very different than a traditional hiring interview.
Okay,
Joe,
great, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Whoever asked that question, if I could send you some examples if you want to. If you want to shoot me an email, I'm just joe@z3.com or give me a call, I'm happy to send some examples of panel interview questions.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Joe. My name is Mark, so you'll see it come from Mark.
Okay, Mark.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you bet.
I just had a quick question when it comes to the actual hiring or negotiating, like the last interview. What's the balance, in your opinion, between salary and commission that you should offer a good salesperson?
That's a great question. So the answer is it depends enormously. There is no right answer. Some jobs, some jobs it's fine to have 100% commission. Other jobs it's not fair to have 100% commission. But what I can say is what I found among most private business owners is the balance that they have in that equation is too heavily on the base salary. Okay, especially if you're looking for hunters and closers. People that are farmers, people that really don't do a lot of hunting and closing, they will push you for higher base salaries. Okay, great salespeople who have a high degree of confidence in themselves, that have blood dripping out of their mouth and love to hunt and relish the kill, the hunt and the kill, and love to do the closing. A lot of those people will want more emphasis on commission, and a lot of them will go for 100% commission if you make it worth their while because they have confidence in themselves. I'm not sure that answers your question. Okay.
We are coming up on about an hour, so I'd probably ask if there are any more questions in interest of everybody's time. Joe's information should be available on your screen, and I believe, Joe, you're making yourself available in case anyone does want to kind of dig deeper offline if they'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd encourage you. I actually, on the heels of this this webinar, actually 2 days ago, I wrote a blog called "Sales Recruiting Doesn't Work," and so if you go to z3.com, it's the first blog in the business blog that you'll see there. It's called "Sales Recruiting Doesn't Work," and it might, if I've missed anything in this webinar, it might connect some dots for you.
And I did want to just put out there, thank you everybody for your patience. I know today has had some technological issues. We are troubleshooting this and may move to a different platform in the future that facilitates this a little better. So we are taking feedback. We want this to be as smooth as possible because we certainly don't want technological issues to detract from the excellent content. So again, thank you everybody for your patience, and I really do appreciate you hanging in because Joe had some really good content today.
Well, and thank you, Rachel. You are absolutely awesome, and I appreciate all you do.
Thank you, guys. If that's all, we'll wrap this up. Again,
just a quick question. How do we get in touch with you, Rachel?
I'm at rmoore, R-M-O-O-R-E,
yep.
at thealternativeboard.com. And also,
okay.
You should be getting a post-seminar survey as well, and I'll see those as well. So any comments you have there, I can take those as well.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Rachel. Appreciate that.
Thank
you all for.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you all very much for coming, and feel free to call me or shoot me an email anytime if you've got further questions.
All right, thank you, Joe.
All right, Rachel. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Please stand by.